Hello, it's Fran from psychicandenergywork.com.au, and this is my monthly update for February 2024. It's a few days late, so I'm really sorry about that. Life has been rather full, and I suppose that's really interesting to observe in the year 2024, where 8 and therefore fullness can be part of the agenda. So if you've been feeling like life's been, or the schedule has been rather chaotic and full of late, congratulations, you're not alone. And that's part of the 8 dynamic, because 8, it's one of the busiest numbers in the 0 to 9 cycle. And it can use busyness, whether that's busyness of schedule, whether that's internal busyness, like can't stop thinking, can't stop go, even sort of, over the top by way of energy levels. But it can also be those sorts of things presenting from the outside world in a way that through that we're encouraged to sort of draw the line. We're encouraged to listen to our bodies, listen to ourselves on every other level as well, and draw boundaries, decide, you know what, this isn't the way of life that really suits me. I need to be quieter. I need even to be busier, whatever. So if you've been going through the motions on those things already in 2024, it's no surprise. The joy of 8, even though it can pull us into those sorts of dynamics, it's also here to help us crystallize what success means for us personally. And I've talked about that before in previous monthly updates, but also in my monthly observations, and even the observations about this year on my website, www.psychicandenergywork.com.au. So feel free to go through to that site and actually read those pages, or even order an audio file and listen to it to the degree that you prefer that format. What do I want to talk about today? So, over this last little while, the issue of, shall we say, healing and therefore processing, but also self-healing has come into play a bit. And one thing that's really stood out for me over this last little while is how I will use the word we, because I'd argue it's more than just one person. It's a dynamic that can be quite common in energy work and healing and spiritual development. We can be inclined to, you could say, nurture our grievances, our wounds, our disappointments. In one level, that's part of the response to such things. There, you could say that everything in that nature or in that area tends to, shall we say, involve a response that is a process, a process that we then go to, be it grieving, be it hurting, be it licking wounds, be it processing, be it recovering. And so, yep, all right, you could say, therefore, that the nurturing of a grievance, the nurturing of a wound, and I don't mean nurturing as in we consciously do that, because, of course, often we do so much on the unconscious level, the subconscious level, and not because we intend to. It's just that, in the world of relationship, irrespective of the level of relationship we're talking about, those things have their own lives. And whenever disappointments or letdowns or whatever those words are come our way, yes, all right, we have a single event, maybe a period of time to deal with and process, but every relationship is an entity in itself. And every wound, you could say, is an entity in itself. That's not to separate the individual from, responsibility, involvement, the ability to shape what happens next. But it also highlights that such things, they have a life of their own. And what I mean by that is that at certain moments in time, of course, especially the older we get, and therefore the more runs on the clock, the more rounds of the tree that we've done, things can pop up from the past, not necessarily because we're planning for that to happen, not necessarily even because we want that to happen, but because, again, life in a way uses these moments to help us develop over time, to help us at certain moments when it is time. It helps us to look at these things again, whether it's look at the event, whether it's look at the other, whether it's look at ourselves, hopefully, and probably it's all of the above, if we're interfacing with processing and self-healing in a well-rounded way. It's interesting, though, because sometimes in the world of spirituality, sometimes, therefore, in the world of one's relationship with Source, with the universe, the divine, whatever you call it, sometimes very subtly in our model, and therefore our approach, and therefore the way we're handling things, consciously or not, there can be almost this little rule that says, you know what, certain things we're not supposed to share, certain things we're just supposed to, swallow and toughen up and, take it on the chin and just deal with it ourselves. And on one level, that's brilliant. That is a part of adulthood. You have to be increasingly able to take things on the chin, deal with it yourself, etc., etc. But when it comes to self-healing, what that can mean is that we never necessarily share the wounds, the grievances, the hurts with the divine, with the universe, whatever you call it, in a way that actually allows it in to heal it. And so sometimes, and I'd argue over this last little while, it seems to have been allowed a theme, as in the theme of keeping things to ourselves, not because we're necessarily meaning to, even thinking to, but because we've yet to get to that understanding that, you know what, the divine needs to see everything. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean spend the entire day, the entire week, the entire year exposing all aspects of self. And yet, that is also interesting because so far this year, there seems to have been a theme popping up from time to time, and that is universe wants even more of a relationship with the individual than it had before. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their relationship beforehand was to be sniffed at, was half-half. Yeah? It just means that, in a way, the universe is asking us, or at least some of us, to share all of our space, all of the quadrants of our pie chart, the pie chart called life or our life, with Source more, in a way that therefore it's being allowed into those spheres, but also it's being, you could say, being carried into those spheres more as a constant rather than letting mind in its usual way somehow separate the individual and therefore, more importantly, the individual's awareness from divine frequencies, from universal energies, from universal will, but also from universal assistance. Sometimes, I'd argue often, egoic self is very much a tunnel-visioned dynamic. It doesn't necessarily start that way, but of course, as its focus gets pulled, it's very easy for that focus to become so centered on what it's doing that it sort of shuts out everything else. And it doesn't mean to do that, and it doesn't necessarily even mean to do that negatively, usually not. And yet that's the nature of egoic self, and therefore overly mindful self, and therefore on one level overly engaged self, or even ambitious self, but not because any of those words are wrong, and not because any of those states should be looked down upon either. Egoic self is a dynamic as it plays through all beings. It is prone to forget the big picture. It's prone, having connected to Source, to the universe, and come to peace, to harmony, to big picture again. It's prone very much, the minute it disconnects from that exercise, it starts to zero in on what it's got to do and what's happening here and who needs what and all of those things in a very human way, in a way that is reality. But within that, very subtly, what we can do is start to be leaving the divine, leaving universal wavelengths, universal will, universal assistance and guidance, intuition at the door. Yeah? In a way that, hello, well, I may have walked in with it, but I've just sort of lost it for a moment, not necessarily in a distressing way or a negative way, but just in a way that all of a sudden Source isn't with me in this process anymore. Not because I'm giving it too much attention, but because somehow I'm positioning as a multitasker, which of course we do all the time. Sometimes I'm positioning in a way that therefore I'm here, but I'm also allowing divine energies to be here, divine intelligence to be here, and therefore divine assistance to be here. In a healing way, we can do that too. And it's not just healing, it's just processing way. Sometimes we can be so focused on what we have to heal or process or deal with, make sense of now, that we don't necessarily remember that sometimes what's happening now actually has its origins way back in time. Maybe not even way back, it could have been just the other day. Everything is linked and everything adds up. And usually in healing, yes, all right, I might be dealing with this particular issue, but often in spiritual healing, a whole lot of other stuff gets cleared and rebalanced as well. Such is the interconnectedness of everything, even on an energetic level. So what I want to get to is the fact that, again, sometimes we think that part of being, or we can think, not even consciously, we can think that part of being an adult is to swallow it. Again, is to cope with it in a way that we don't necessarily understand that we can share that for the universe to look at, for the universe to go into, and for the universe to help release in a way that it's not just us doing the release or not just us volunteering what we know to release. It's also about, hey, from time to time, actually let the universe into your room, called disappointments, called wounds, called grievances, called letdowns, anything, like even lack of faith, even loss of faith, loss of trust, disappointment. I think I've said that word already. Yeah. In a way that we're not identifying specifically what we're wanting source to look at in that moment, even if we have a wish for that to occur. It's more about, hello, walk into this room, have a look in this cupboard, and actually, can you go to the edges? Can you wipe through? Can you see everything in this cupboard until all you see is the surface of the cupboard and all of the energies that have sort of been, you could say, stockpiling in there, gathering dust in there, whether there's just one or two or whether there's zillions, whether it's past life or whether it's this life or even future life, whether it's even just other people's relative to your own as well as your own. You see, so healing is interesting and self-healing is interesting, and also letting universal energies, intelligence, help, assistance, guidance, protection even in, especially when we have issues to work through. Yeah. Why? Because again, we may, with our eyes, with our minds, with our memories, be able to clock, where did that start? Why did those things happen? And how did we get here? But you see, of course, behind that is a whole lot of other factors, be they past life or current, that we may not be aware of yet. So at this point of 2024, because it is very much a year that is about working out how life works with each person. In other words, each of us is here to work out how to cook the recipe called our lives in a way that suits us. What ingredients suit? What ingredients really fit in our recipe called life, in our approach, but also in our response, in our bodily response, our sense of how things fit with us or not. And within that, again, every so often, allow the divine, welcome the divine, the universe, whatever you call it, welcome it in a way that you're just, in a sense, you're at the front door of your being and you're just inviting it to go wherever it wants. Whether that be to a particular energetic part of you, a particular mental or physical, emotional part of you, or whether it's to an aspect of life, in a way that you assign it the intelligence and also the knowledge, the ability as well, to actually make a circuit of the container called you, the gatherer called you, because of course egoic self is a gatherer. It's one of the world's best selfie takers. Yeah, the best recorder. The trouble is it can hoard its recordings. The trouble is that from time to time it can think, you know what, I'm not allowed to use those words with the divine. I'm not allowed to be angry. I'm not allowed to, present in a way that I'm just whinging or complaining or sitting in grievance. And by doing that, we keep those things from universal assistance and from divine healing. Because at the end of the day, the divine doesn't care what you have to say to it, as long as you're doing it in integrity, as long as you're doing it in the name of self-healing and trying to be a better person, trying to get to a better world, trying to create a different world, a better world. The divine's in it because that's its objectives too. And so whatever needs to happen in the name of self-healing, let it happen. Sometimes that's sit with a pen and paper and write it out. Don't vet the words. Don't hold the words back. Even if they're really rude words or, I don't know, foul words, if that's the word for it, unpleasant words, let them out. Yeah. If you're angry with the universe, tell it, and tell it in a way that you're not just doing that on an empty level. You're doing that in a way that you're actually having that conversation. You're actually getting it off your chest in a way that as you do that, you're allowing your disappointments to come up. You're allowing your tears and whatever else needs to be processed to come up and out rather than holding it down and in. The divine is in for healing on any level. The divine can tolerate any expression. It does already. It always has. Hey. But when it's done in the name of healing, it often really gets stuck in there and helps as you let the limits that you can put on yourself, any of us, go, as you allow the honesty, pure honesty, not only verbal, but again, here's my cupboard of grievances, Source. Have a look at that. And can you please go up and down? Have a look at everything in there in a way that as you look at it, you merge with it, or more importantly, it merges with you. As you look at it, you somehow start dislodging it from its stuckness, from its repeating soundtrack, in a way that all of a sudden it's getting ready to dissolve, and all of a sudden it starts to dissolve, and all of a sudden the healing occurs. Now be very wary with this process or this approach, because as we allow the universe into our cupboards of hurts, letdowns, wounds, grievances, of any sort, be they small, teeny weeny, or huge. As we do that, we are allowing healing to occur in a sense that's backwards. In other words, the healing will occur on an energetic level, but then quite possibly there is a need for the emotional release, the cognitive shift, and quite possibly even a behavioral shift, having had that done. Why is this so important for all the levels that I've discussed? But you see, also too, it takes energy to hold grievance in place. And it's not necessarily so that we are consciously investing energy in such a dynamic. But it takes energy to hold that stuff in place. And for as long as it's taking energy, for as long as energy is being diverted into holding something like that in place, it's also being diverted away from energizing you, inspiring you, equipping you, and also manifesting for you in a way that is about forward movement, fulfillment of path, attainment of goals, and the experience of support. Because at the end of the day, if we're not able to open up fully, we are not able to receive support fully. Let me try that another way. If we are somehow holding back on the divine, you can look in all my other rooms, but not that cupboard. And yet sometimes it's that very cupboard, that very section that we're not quite allowing it into yet to look, to see, to share in, and to help us with. Often, by not doing that, we are not yet fully genuine, fully open, fully in relationship with the universe, in a way that then also facilitates the intuitive download, the spiritual healing, the breakthrough, and even the manifestation or the attracting of things, that we know are possible this life. And if I bring that back full circle to what was being said before, this year seems to be a year where the universe wants more present relationship with individuals. Now, that's not me saying let's go and make that happen from a pushing or a trying or an egoic sense. But to the degree that, should we say, there are gaps or holes, to the degree that things just aren't quite connecting as you know they can, to what degree might that be because you haven't turned around to source through no fault of your own? It's not a criticism. We all do this often. It's called mind. It's called day-to-day. It's called reality in the year 2024. But to what degree is that mirroring back to you the fact that, hello, you haven't even connected with source fully yet. So how can it connect for you or to you? Of course, the divine's always there. But sometimes the universe uses space, silence, inaction. You could say lack of flow, lack of delivery, lack of manifestation. It uses these things as carrot on stick to help us further into relationship with us in a way that suits us, in a way that does not detract from the physical path, from the physical existence, but also enhances that existence because we are more accompanied in a very palpable way, in a way that we're aware of, and in a way that we embrace, and in a way that we enjoy and welcome as a very real feed from a very communicative energy that is only ever wanting to help us all, help each other and ourselves on our way. So all the very best to you for my monthly update for February 2024. I hope these words have sort of triggered a few things for you in a positive sense, and I hope that this month continues to flow well. Yeah, we're only at the start. Know that, therefore, and know that in one sense, any sense of it is yet to come doesn't mean it's not. It just means that it's still on its way. So open up the door to receive it. Don't shut down. Open up the affirmations to catch it and digest it and integrate with the breakthroughs or the forward movements or the positives that you're wanting to see next, or you know that can happen next. Because the more we interface well as a receiver before flow has even started, the more the flow actually hits home. Take good care, travel well. Thanks for tuning in, and speak to you again soon. All the very best.